All right, thank you. So yeah, my name is Alex Terentiev, and welcome to the session Develop Once, Use Twice, SharePoint Framework in Microsoft Teams. And first of all, mark your calendars. Now SharePoint Conference is Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference, and it will be held on March 23rd to 25th, 2021 in MGM Grand Resort in Vegas. And thank you to all our generous sponsors. They're making these events available for us. So yeah, great thank you for all these companies. Don't forget about the raffle and submit your answers to win one of 3 Oculus Quest all-in-one. And also consider donating to the following COVID-19 relief funds, United Way and International Medical Corps, and 10% of funds from the sponsors go to support community relief as well. Now, a few words about myself. I'm an Office Development MVP, Custom Solutions Architect, and Lead Developer in SharePoint at least. I have more than 10 years of experience with SharePoint and extensive experience in front-end development and modern web development toolchain. Currently, I'm a Microsoft 365 PNP team member, and I have been 3 times awarded during SharePoint Dev Kitchen events by SharePoint Dev Team. But more important, of course, is social media. So follow me on Twitter, read my blog, visit my GitHub profile, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. A few words about the company I'm working for. It's called SharePoint at least. We are a services and products company. We are specializing on Microsoft 365 ecosystem. We do development, automations, migrations, intranets, and so on and so forth. And check out one of our products, Navigator for Teams and SharePoint, that allows you to aggregate data across SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive, and display all this data using rich grouping, filtering, and layout capabilities. And now, agenda for today's session. First of all, we will do a SharePoint framework overview. Then we will do Microsoft Teams development overview. Then we will talk about SharePoint framework in Microsoft Teams. And of course, we will code. So let's start with the SharePoint framework overview. So what is SharePoint framework? The SharePoint framework is a modern way to develop SharePoint customizations. It's client-side, it's modern, it's mobile-first, it's framework-agnostic, meaning that you can use any JavaScript or TypeScript framework you like. It is based on commonly used web development tools, which is kind of a headache for classic SharePoint developers because we are not in .NET world anymore, we are in front-end world, but it actually allows us to bring the latest and greatest from web development, from front-end development into SharePoint, and basically it was well overdue, I would say. One more thing to mention here about SharePoint framework is that first-party SharePoint components are developed using SharePoint framework as well, and it actually makes SharePoint framework a unique development platform because first-party developers and third-party developers are in the same boat. So I talked a little bit about development toolchain, and let's overview all the tools that we have to develop our customizations in SharePoint framework. As I said, we are not in .NET world anymore, we are in front-end world, but all these tools are pretty similar to what we have in .NET. So Node.js is a hosting and serving environment for your JavaScript projects, and it's pretty similar to IS Express in .NET world. NPM is a package manager that allows you to reference different external libraries, modules in your projects, and it's similar to NuGet package manager in .NET. Webpack is a modules transformer, bundler, and packager. It collects all your TypeScript files, CSS files from your project, compile them, bundle them into chunks that will be loaded to the page later on. Gulp is an extendable task runner. It allows you to create custom tasks and build different routines made of these tasks. And for example, SharePoint framework build routine is based on Gulp tasks, and we can actually even create our custom tasks and inject them into SharePoint framework build routine as well. And if you look at the Webpack and Gulp, together they are pretty similar to MS Build in .NET world. The next one is Human Generator, and Human Generator is a templates engine with the generators ecosystem, and you can think of generator as a conditional template. So when you launch generator, it asks you a few questions, few prompts, like what type of solution you want to create, what's the name of the solution, and so on and so forth. And based on your answers, it will create a project or scaffold a project for you. And the last one is a TypeScript. It's a language, it's a type superset of JavaScript. It's pretty similar to C#, and it is the language you will be using to create your SharePoint framework solution. And as you can see, there are a lot of tools, and you can have a question like, wow, what should I learn first, second, third, and so on and so forth. So my recommendation would be you definitely need to be familiar with TypeScript, because you will be using TypeScript on day-to-day basis, and you need to know all the features of the language to be productive and to develop performant code as well. And from all other tools, I would say you should be also familiar with NPM and also with libraries that are available in NPM, because you don't want to invent the wheel, right? For example, if you want to work with dates and correctly process like time zones, localization, and so on and so forth, you can use Moment.js library that is available in NPM instead of developing all the stuff by yourself. So TypeScript and NPM are pretty important. All other tools, you can just learn few commands that you need to create your project, to debug it, to launch it, and deploy it. And that's practically it. All right, so what is currently available in SharePoint framework? First of all, client-side web parts. And if you are familiar with ASP.NET web parts, the idea here is the same. Client-side web parts is just a component that can be added to the page in SharePoint and usually solves some business problem or business issue. Good thing about client-side web parts or SharePoint framework web parts, they can be added both to classic and modern pages, and then it can be added to SharePoint 2016, 2019, and SharePoint Online. And also, these client-side web parts are available in Microsoft Teams, and basically that is the topic what we are talking today during this session. And as a preview, client-side web parts are available as Outlook add-ins as well. So if you plan to develop some web part in near future or not even near future, please use SharePoint framework, because it's a future-proof approach that will be available not only in SharePoint, but across Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So next one, extensions. And extensions allow you to extend or customize modern SharePoint UI and modern SharePoint behavior. And currently there are 4 types of extensions available. The first one is Application Customizer. It allows you to add a custom header and footer to the page, or you can just use it to inject custom JavaScript or CSS to a page as well. The second one is Command Set Customizer. Command Set Customizer allows you to add custom buttons to list command bar and list item context menu. The third one is Field Customizer. It allows you to provide custom rendering for list columns. And the last available extension is the Search Query Modifier that allows you to extend search query before it actually sent to the server for processing. So for example, on this screenshot, you can see that user typed meeting in the search box, and we have translated it to Spanish and Turkish. And then it was sent to the server, and we got the results for all 3 languages. So basically, you can think about a lot of scenarios you can do using this extension as well. One more thing available in SharePoint framework is library components, and you can think of library components as a shared code, and this shared code is deployed to your tenant app catalog and can be reused by any other SharePoint framework solution across your tenant as well. And there was a session earlier today by David Warner about library components, and I will have one more session tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific time as well, where I'll be covering library components and how you can use it to create reusable React templates. Minimal path to awesome. So what steps you need to proceed with to create and launch your SharePoint framework solution? First of all, you need to install Node.js and NPM to your machine. And one remark here that currently SharePoint framework supports Node.js version 8 and 10. 12 is not supported yet. Next one, you need to install IDE because you will be developing code, and there is no actual requirements for IDE. It's good if it has like syntax highlighting for TypeScript, for CSS, and also some I don't know, IntelliSense. I prefer Visual Studio Code because first of all, it's free. It was initially created for front-end development, and all the examples probably that you will see around SharePoint framework are demonstrated using Visual Studio Code as well. So even if you use any other IDE, it's at least good for you to be familiar with Visual Studio Code as well. So next step is to install Yeoman and Gulp to your machine, and this is done using npm. I here in this command is a shortcut for install. -g parameter shows that we are installing these modules globally and they will be available across your machine. Yo is a shortcut for Yeoman and Gulp is Gulp. When Yeoman and Gulp are installed, we can also install Yeoman SharePoint generator. Again, it's done using npm. We're installing it globally, and the package is called @microsoft/generator-sharepoint. When the generator is installed, we can navigate to the folder where we want to create our project and start scaffolding the project using Yeoman and SharePoint generator with yo @microsoft/sharepoint command. It will ask you a few questions like what is the solution name? Do you want to create a library component extension or a web part? What is the name of web part? Do you want to use plain TypeScript or do you want to use React or Knockout and so on and so forth? And when you answer all these questions, it will create a project for you like a Hello World project that you can actually even deploy to the SharePoint and test how it works. If you are developing the first ever project on this specific machine, you need to trust the self-signed developer certificate using gulp trustDevCert command. It will allow you to locally debug your SharePoint framework solutions using browsers and local server. And the last thing to do is to actually run your project using gulp serve command. It will launch local server, it will open your default browser, and in the browser it will open a workbench page that allows you to add your web part in there and test how it will look like in SharePoint. But you don't need to connect to SharePoint. You can have some mock data in there, and yeah, everything is just local. You don't even need the development environment inside SharePoint at this time. And that's all I have from SharePoint framework overview. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I think there is one question from Jesse. Alex?
Yes.
And the question is, I'll read word by word. Is it easy for someone to pursue everything related to Office 365, like custom development with SPFx, PNP, Graph, React, TypeScript, and then work with the Power Platform like Power BI, etc.? What is your take on that?
So it depends. So SharePoint framework and development it's for pro devs, right? For the Power Platform, it's mostly drag and drop. You still need to develop something in there, but it's more like Excel functions, I would say. But if you want to know my opinion about the transition, for example, if you are already a SharePoint developer or SPFx developer, yes, you definitely can go to Power Platform as well. And vice versa, if you are a citizen developer and you want to learn something more, you can transfer back to Pro developer for SharePoint framework and Microsoft Graph, because like the under the hood, Power Platform and SPFx, Microsoft Graph, they're using the same data and the same entities. So basically, you know the basement of all of that stuff. It only depends on your like skills if you're a pro dev or citizen dev.
And if anyone has any question, just type in the chat box. So we'll take it as we go. as Alex agreed. So yeah, just type in there, and whenever we get a chance, we'll be taking those questions. Thank you.
All right, so let's go further. Microsoft Teams development overview. So Microsoft Teams development is represented by Microsoft Teams developer platform that allows you to develop custom enterprise or service as a service applications that are integrated, of course, in Microsoft Teams. There are two types of applications that you can develop. One of them is global applications that are published to Teams Store and available for organizations all over the world. And the second one is line of business applications that are specific to your organization and are public to the tenants Teams app catalog. So nothing new here, right? It's the same situation as with the SharePoint add-ins or Office add-ins or whatever. Applications developed for Microsoft Teams can include multiple different parts that allow to extend Teams and communicate with the user in different ways. So let's overview what's available in Teams apps and what parts can be part of your team app. The first one is tabs, and tabs allow you to display basically any web application in Teams. And there are two types of tabs available in Teams. The first one is personal tab, when the content is specific to user. And these tabs are automatically pinned to the apps bar or left navigation in the Teams. And the second type of tabs is channel or group tabs. And these tabs provide same content for the whole group or for the whole team, and these tabs are added to Teams channels or group chats. The next one, bots, and bots provide the communication with the user through messages or push notifications. And here are some scenarios that are very good for bots. The first one is natural interactions in chats, similarly like you interact with voice assistants like Cortana, Siri, or Alexa, but yeah, you're typing, not it's not speech, it's typing, but still you can ask some questions in natural language. You don't need to know specific commands or something. The second type or the second scenario is command-based bots, when bots interact similarly to a set of commandlets like PowerShell, let's say. And the last type of bots is notification-only bots. They can send notifications to Teams activity feed, and users cannot mention or send a message to such a bot. Next one is connectors or Office 365 connectors. They allow you to push your line of business application content to the Teams. Basically, they work like incoming webhook when an external application sends a specific request to an endpoint registered in your tenant. And when the endpoint receives the message, the card will be displayed in Microsoft Teams. And you can also use Office 365 connectors in Outlook, not only in Teams. Scenarios for Office 365 connectors, for example, getting some notifications from line of business applications to approve or reject documents right inside the channel. And another one is get tweets by hashtag. By the way, this connector is kind of out of the box connector, available in Teams. You can play with it if you want. Another good example that you can use just to play with webhooks is GitHub notifications. So basically, if something is happening in GitHub Prepper, you will have notification inside your channel as well. Next one is messaging extensions, and messaging extensions allow you to integrate your apps right inside messaging input. So examples for pre-built messaging extensions are emojis, Giphy, stickers. So basically everything that you see at the bottom part of your input is messaging extensions. And scenarios for what you can do with messaging extensions. For example, you can insert a bug from your tracking system. When user selects your messaging extension, that you can provide some kind of search where users search for a specific bug or issue. And when he clicks on the item, it will be posted to the channel. Another example, you can do vice versa. Basically, if a user provided some information in the messaging input, you can collect this information and create a new bug based on this information from a user. Next one is activity feed, and we've already touched a little bit activity feed when we were talking about notification-only bots. Actually, any type of bot can post a message into activity feed. And this message can also include a deep link to the content within the tab where the communication with the bot is happening. And if you are not familiar with deep links are the links that allow teams to redirect you to a specific tab or even to a specific content inside the tab. And if you're developing a custom tab, you can implement your logic how you want to process a deep link and display needed content. The next one is webhooks. So Office 365 connectors are incoming webhooks. These webhooks are outgoing webhooks, and they're pretty similar to bots. They allow a user to communicate with the webhook using @mentions. It's more kind of easy way to extend Teams for like kicking off some flows or getting some content based on simple commands. In comparison with the bots, webhooks are limited to messaging API inside Teams. So basically, you cannot create like channel or add user to a group. You can only provide some message to a user and get some message from a user. Good scenarios for, and yes, the webhooks cannot be proactive as well. So basically, they cannot send some welcome message, for example, for a user. Good examples for using webhooks. First of all, kicking off some build or checking some issue status. You don't need to implement bot for such simple scenarios. And the last thing to mention in types of what's available inside Microsoft Teams apps, cards. And card is a UI component for some piece of information to be rendered in a channel or a chat. And additionally, cards can have actions. And there are a lot of different types of cards available in Microsoft Teams. I want to point 4 of them. The first one is adaptive cards. Adaptive cards is a new cross-product specification for cards in Microsoft. And you can use them not only in Teams, but in Cortana, in Windows, in Outlook as well. And this type of cards inside Teams, they can be used in bots, in webhooks, and messaging extensions. The next one is hero cards, and this is a simple card with some header, some subheader, sorry. It can have a large image, text, and multiple buttons. And again, hero cards can be used in bots, in webhooks, and messaging extensions. Next one is list cards. List cards allow you to render a scrollable list of items, and they can be used in bots and webhooks. And the last one is Office 365 connector cards. They're pretty similar to adaptive cards. These cards provide you flexible layout. They can have multiple sections, images, actions, and so on and so forth. And Microsoft recommends use them in Office 365 connectors only. Technically, you can use them in bots, webhooks, and messaging extensions as well. But because adaptive cards is like a new specification, it's better to use adaptive cards instead of Office 365 connector cards. And that is for overview of Microsoft Teams development. Any questions?
I don't see any questions on the hold on. No.
Okay.
Any questions? Anyone has any questions? Feel free to type in the chat box, or else we will proceed.
All right. So SharePoint framework in Microsoft Teams. So we discussed SharePoint framework, we discussed Teams development, and now, of course, it's time to combine. So integration point provided by Microsoft allows you to use any SharePoint framework web part as a team step. So again, if you want to develop a bot or webhook or currently messaging extensions, SharePoint framework is not the way to do so. But if you want to develop a Microsoft Teams tab, you can use SharePoint framework. If you use SharePoint framework, the web part will be rendered inside a tab in Teams as an iframe, and all the assets will be hosted in SharePoint in the same way as for standard SharePoint framework solution. The web part gets team context with such properties as group ID, team name, current channel, etc., and you can use these properties inside your logic. And the web part still has access to the SharePoint context of the underlying site that you can use as well. And because it's still standard SharePoint framework solution, all the configurations are available. Like you can select how you want to package your assets. Do you want to use Office 365 CDN, or do you want to host your solution on some external CDN? What do you want to provision? Do you want to use some feature framework to add additional custom lists to your site, and so on and so forth? So basically, all the configurations available for SharePoint framework will be still available even if you use SharePoint framework web part in Microsoft Teams. So it was the only slide that I have in this section because it's more interesting to code instead of talking about stuff. And before we switch to Visual Studio Code, I want to demonstrate you minimal path to awesome Teams edition. And the only difference with like a standard SharePoint framework solution, you need to make your web part available for Microsoft Teams. And for that purposes, you need to go to web parts manifest, and for supported hosts property, add the Teams tab if you want your SharePoint framework web part to be available as a Teams tab, or Teams personal app if you want it to be available as a personal app. And what I will be showing you during the demo, we will be creating a web part that basically shows the same files that are listed in Files tab inside Teams. So here we are in general channel, and we have two files. So basically, if you navigate to the Files tab, you will see the same two files. And I will be using Microsoft Graph to get these files from the team and from the channel. So let me actually first go to my command prompt and show you how to create the SharePoint framework project. So I'm already in the folder where I want to create my solution. So I can start with Microsoft/SharePoint. It can take some time until everything is kind of launching. But it's pretty important to show you this part because one of the questions from human generator is important, and you cannot leave it by default. You need to change the value for that because otherwise your solution will not be available in Teams. So let's wait a little bit and hopefully everything works as expected. While we're waiting, I can answer some questions probably.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type in the chat box.
Come on.
Oh, no questions.
Let me try it again. Yes, I want to close this one. Let me relaunch it complete. No. One moment, I will relaunch it. Here we go. Okay. Let's try again. Your Microsoft/SharePoint. Yay, it's running now. All right. So, come on. Your call is very important for us. Please stay on the line. All right. It seems like it doesn't want to work. Hopefully, I at least can see what's going on in my prepared environment. Okay, now it works. Cool. So the first question is solution name, which can be by default. You're selecting SharePoint Online only because you want to have the latest version of SharePoint framework with the Teams available in there. I can use the current folder for my solution. Next one is important. So basically, that's why I wanted to show you the scaffolding. So this is a long text here, but basically it's called tenant-wide deployment. So tenant-wide deployment, if it's set to yes, your web part will be automatically available in any site collection inside your tenant. So when you deploy to tenant app catalog, you can add your web part to any SharePoint site collection. And this is important for Microsoft Teams because basically every team is a site collection. And if you want to add your web part to any team, you want it to be available in any site collection. So when you're provisioning your, when you're scaffolding your project, please set this parameter to yes. And now I don't need to do anything more in this one. I will just navigate to the environment I already have, and let me open the code. So basically, that is what created by default by SharePoint human generator. We have a basic web part. We have render method to render our component. I'm using React framework. That's why I have this demo.ts6. And let me probably make this a little bit larger. Okay, so let's start modifying this web part to work with Teams first and with Microsoft Graph. So first we need to go to the manifest file of our web part, and I want to make the solution available in Teams, like Teams personal app and Teams app. Okay, save JSON file. Next step, we want to work with Microsoft Graph. And to do so, we need to request specific permissions from Microsoft Graph or specific scopes. So what scopes we will need to communicate with Microsoft Graph. And let me show you what I'm going to use, what Graph endpoints I'm going to use. Here I have Microsoft Graph Explorer, if you're not familiar with Graph Explorer, it allows you to connect to your tenant and run different graph endpoints right from this UI. You don't need to write your code. So basically, this is the URL, or this is the endpoint I'm going to use. And let me make it larger a little bit. So what we have here, we have groups first. So we are getting groups. We are getting specific group from here based on ID, and we will get this ID from Teams context. Then we are getting drive, and for the group, drive is basically a site collection. From this drive, we are getting root, which is a default document library on your site collection. And from this root, we are getting the subfolder using the URL for the channel. In that case, is general, but again, we will be using Teams context to get the URL to the channel, and we are getting children. So we are getting files for this folder. And from the result perspective, we will be using name to display the name of the file and web URL to redirect to the file. But again, from the URL perspective, we are using groups endpoint, we are using site endpoint, and we are using files endpoint. So basically, we need to request permissions to work with groups, to work with sites, and to work with files. So let me go back to the code, and I have my cheat sheet in here to just copy needed permissions. Let me open it and copy. And now we should go to package-solution.json file. And to request permissions, we should add additional parameter called web API permission requests. And this is an array where you can provide all the scopes for the graph you need. So for example, in our case, as I said, we are requesting file.read because we want to work with files. We are requesting group.read.all because we need to read groups, and sites.read.all because we are working with sites as well. Now we can go to our web part, and we want to get all our files or all our documents before the web part is rendered. And to do so, the best place to do so is to override on init method. And it is an asynchronous method. And basically, you can do all the initialization and this method, and be sure that render will be called only after on init is finished. Okay, so let me do that. And inside this method, we can work with graph. Oops, what's going on? Okay, so let me create a private variable that will be used to store our documents. It will be type of any. And inside the onInit method, first thing I want to check if we are inside SharePoint or if we are inside Teams. For these purposes, we can use context of our web part. The context contains SDKs property, and inside SDKs property, there is a Microsoft Teams. So if Microsoft Teams is initialized, in that case, we are inside Teams. In that case, we can get Teams context like this, context, oops, SDKs, Microsoft Teams, context. And as I previously mentioned, in this context, you will have a lot of properties, a lot of information about current team. So you have channel relative URL, you have chat ID, entity ID, group ID, and so on and so forth. So we will be using this context and information from this context to make our request. So to make requests, we will be using MS Graph client provided by SharePoint Framework as well. So for that, I will do this context, MS Graph client factory, get client. It will return us the Microsoft Graph client that is already authenticated to work with Microsoft Graph. Okay, so next we need to specify the URL to the channel. And for that, let me do channel URL. It will be equal to, and here I will be using our Teams context. Come on. Context. channel relative URL, and this is the relative URL to the your domain, for example, contoso.sharepoint.com. So we additionally need to replace the relative URL to the site and document library. So I want to replace or even for simplicity, I will use team channel name because we don't have a lot of time here. So I'll be using channel name because I'm not renamed that. So basically it will provide the same information as the URL. Okay, and now we can do the request to the graph. So response will be await client, our graph client API. For API, we can copy this URL and change needed parameters. So first we need to replace the group ID, and we'll be using Teams context group ID here. And the same for this general. Instead of general, we'll be using our channel URL, and I need to add here. Okay, and we are using version v10 of Microsoft Graph, and we do GET request. After we got a response, it will be the same as we saw here in our Graph Explorer. In the value, we will have the collection of all the documents we need. So we can do these documents equal to response value as array of any. Okay, after that, if we are inside Teams, we'll have our documents and we want to display them. So let me go to the props of my component, and I will add additional parameters in here, like documents any. In that case, I can provide these documents from my web part. Here, documents is equal to these documents. And in the code of my component is in the markup of the React component, I will remove all the default markup I don't need. So I don't need this one. I will remove the titles, and I will remove column and this div. And I will check if we have any documents in our props. In that case, we will do like that. These props documents map, and for each document we will return a markup, and our markup will be div and simple a element with href equals to d web URL. We want to open it in a separate tab, of course, and the text for our link will be d.name. Okay, and I need to close the div. And that's it. Let's actually check if we have any errors. Hopefully it works pretty quick now. Hopefully, because I want to show you a few more slides. The first time I'm in a situation when gulp and node don't work to work completely. Come on, come on, come on. Yay, it's working. Hopefully there are no errors.
Hey, Alex, while you're doing that, just want to let everyone know we got 4 more minutes.
Okay.
If anyone has any question, just type in.
So it's pretty slow. Let me try to run it like that. So I will start my server, and if I have the package already prepared, I will show you how we are uploading the solution to app catalog and then provision it to Teams. So basically, if I go here to the tenant app catalog, I can select the SPFx file as we usually do for SharePoint framework solutions. Let me go to C, Alex, work, speaking, demos, and SPFx Teams, and demo. No, I don't have it here, but probably it is installed already. So here it is. So at least it is installed. So basically what you're doing, you're deploying a SPFx file to your app catalog. You will see the pop-up that, hey, are you sure you want to make this tenant-wide deployment? You should check this checkbox. Sorry that I cannot show it to you right now. I don't know what's going on with the Gulp. But basically, after that, when the solution is installed, you click on Files in this ribbon and you have Sync to Teams button. When you click Sync to Teams button, it will automatically provision your solution to the Teams app catalog. So basically, you don't need to install it manually to Teams app catalog. You just need to install it to SharePoint app catalog. Next step to do, you should go to Tenant Admin Center, Advanced, API Access in here, and you will see all the requests for your APIs, for all the scopes. So in my case, I already have this sites read all. I have group read all as well. If they're not previously approved, you will see them in pending request sections, and you need to approve them to allow your web part to communicate to Microsoft Graph. And let's see if the web part is running, almost running. Hopefully I have 2 more minutes to showcase it to you. So hopefully it will work. Come on. Well, that's insanely slow, so I will just jump back to the presentation, unfortunately. So believe me, you will see the same kind of thing. So you can add your SharePoint framework web part as a regular tab. So if you click on plus in your team and your channel, you will see your demo web part in that case, and you can add it to your channel and see the same documents as in Files tab. So after code cheat sheet, some things that I want to mention before wrapping up. First of all, you need to have SharePoint Framework 1.8 or 1.10 generator installed on your machine if you want to use your SharePoint Framework solutions in Teams. So 1.8 is for Teams tab and 1.10 for personal apps. The second one, as I mentioned, you need to select tenant scope deployment option when you're scaffolding the project and also when the app is installed into the app catalog. You need to add Teams tab and Teams personal app as a supported host in your web parts manifest. you need click Sync to Teams ribbon button in App Catalog when you deployed it to the App Catalog. And if you're using Microsoft Graph, don't forget to ask your tenant admin to approve permissions request in tenant in SharePoint Admin Center. And from resources.
Yeah, sorry for interruption. So yeah,
we're out of time.
Yeah, man. So thank you. It was awesome, and you can continue with our community zone if you have any questions, and this will a recorded session will be available. I appreciate and thank you, Alex.
Thank you for joining. Thank you very much, and sorry that it was not so good because of the data guts.
Fine. So yeah. So with that being said, we'll come back again in a few minutes for our next session. And you can leave or you want to stay. We'll see you in a few minutes for the next session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Bye.